Tahoma2D, which is a fork of OpenToons, is the best free 2D animation program I've used so far. This is a quick start tutorial if you want to learn a professional grade animation program for free. Go to Tahoma2D.org, click download, pick official release, and install. Unzip the file, and wherever you cut and paste this folder, that is your install. Launch Tahoma2D. On the startup window, click New Project. Navigate the file tree to save the project where you usually save art stuff. Name it. Okay. Create a new scene and make sure the settings are how you like. And now you're all set up. There are 3 layer types. 2 rasters where you're basically drawing PNGs like any art program. A regular raster layer does not have a linked color palette. Smart raster and vector do, meaning if you draw with this color, any changes to that color in the palette affect every drawing where you use that color. Note that on the vector layers, you can draw outside the canvas. Raster layers, if you want to overdraw, you have to click the layer, go to level, canvas size, and make it bigger. Hide a layer here. Prevent a layer from exporting in your finished animation here. Solo a layer, or show all of the layers by using the right-click menu. Brush settings are at the top of the window. Brush types are in the raster pane for raster layers and the vector pane for vector layers. On vector layers, using a brush type adds it to your palette. Select lines and click palette swatches to change the effects. To create the gradient fills that you might be used to in other programs, you have to use a vector layer. Go to the vector tab, click this green box. Now, in your swatches, double-click the gradient. The bottom of the new window is where you can pick and edit the 2 gradient colors. Change alpha transparency here, and I haven't figured out a way to do more than 2 colors, so it's kind of just limited in that way. Also, editing the gradient angle and start-stop is unfortunately a pain. Go to the settings and adjust these sliders to do it. Gradients will respond to shape adjustments around your lines, so good luck keeping consistency between drawings. It's literally impossible when paste in place only works on raster layers, meaning anytime you copy art in one frame and try to paste it in another, it pastes offset, with no Ctrl-Shift-V option to force it to paste in the exact same spot as before. There's no paste in place. And since fills don't exist as objects, you can't copy and paste them either. Maddening. It's maddening. Vector layer lines have editable control points. Use the control point editor tool. This control point editor feels floaty compared to other programs. It's tougher to get precise results, but it's usable. Separate the handles by holding Alt. Alt-click a point to remove handles. If you want linked handles, you have to drag them into position, let go, and hope Tahoma gets it. For bucket filling colors, you can change how sensitive the tool is to gaps on the top bar. Weird thing about vector layer bucket fills. If you break a closed loop, the fill disappears or floods adjacent areas. Also, paint under does not work on fills. If you want to paint under a fill, you have to be using the Smart Raster Paint tool. Paint multiple frames at once by changing bucket tool frame range to linear. Click the area you want to fill, go to the last frame you want to affect, and click again in the fill location. Every drawing in between will be painted. When you have a bunch of layers, you might want them to share the same color palette. I usually do. So under Panels, open the Studio palette. Click and drag your layer palette to the Studio palette. Now click and drag your Studio palette to that layer, and to any other layer you want to use it in. If you want to make sure color changes on the master palette stick, you have to highlight all the swatches, right-click, toggle link to Studio palette. When you make master changes, save for them to take effect. You can also add Studio palettes to an existing palette by right-clicking. These are all editing tools for vector layers. Pretty unique to Tahoma. I've only seen similar tools in Blender. Pinch, pump, magnet. Bender, click inside a shape and then click somewhere else and drag to warp. Iron smooths, cutter cuts lines into pieces. That's another thing I haven't really figured out how to do efficiently in Tahoma is cutting off line segments. This is something that Toon Boom is really efficient with, and it's not playing nice for me here. More tools I'm gonna ignore. Stage controls: zoom, rotate, pan. Reset the view to default here. Flip the canvas view here. This does not affect the art, it's just a view thing. If you want to flip the art itself, you have to use the selection tool and click Flip up here. Flipping off a changed center point doesn't work the way it should, so yeah. Change if you can see past the camera edges here. An opacity slider for the outer areas. Render preview shows what the art quality will actually look like when exported. Also, you will not see any of your schematic panel effects unless you're in render preview. You can change your background color under Scene settings. If you don't want transparent background exports, slide alpha all the way up. Onion skin. Click the top bar either side to pick what onion skin frames you want to see. If you click just above that, it will set a permanent onion skin that doesn't move with your playhead. When you make a drawing, if you copy and paste this frame, it is the same drawing. Editing either of these will change both, because it's the same drawing. It works the same as Toon Boom. So, if you want to make a copy of a drawing that you can change without hurting the original, click Duplicate Drawing or press D. You'll see the new art here, and notice its number is different here, and here if you have the timeline expanded. Important, if you copy an entire layer, that copied layer still uses the same drawings. So edits to any drawings on copied layers will affect the drawings on every single layer that shares them. The same thing goes for copying and pasting frames to any layer. This is still the same drawing. It's actually hard to unlink drawings in this program. So to stop this from happening, copy your frame, right-click, paste special, paste as copy. Now changes are separate from the original. You can do an entire cycle by shift-clicking copy and then paste as copy. And if you want to copy the entire layer but not have it be linked at all to the original, click the layer, go to Level, Load Level, find your layer, and right-click, Rename. Rename and check the Create a Copy box and go to the new layer and load. This is a really roundabout way to do it, but that's how you copy a whole layer without it being linked to the same drawings as the first layer. Need to loop something? Highlight frames, go to Cells, Loop Frames, and adjust with brackets. Add frames if you want. Loops continue until you interrupt them with something else or put a stop frame. This is actually the best looping mechanism in any animation program I've ever used. Tahoma2D really got this right. Animation Tweens. All of that exists in the Animate tool. Use it to drag, scale, change the center control point, rotate. Anytime you use this tool, animation keyframes are created. Or you can manually keyframe with this button. Controlling tweens is complicated, like After Effects level of complicated, so I moved that to the advanced tips at the end of the video. To link and organize layers, go to Panels, Schematic. Tahoma uses a node network just like Toon Boom Premium. Because of this, you can actually recreate Toon Boom's peg system for animation, which I recommend doing because otherwise Tahoma's tween keyframes are on the same stack as your drawings, and adjusting that is really annoying. Now, the downside is you can't hide transformations by turning your imaginary Tahoma peg layer off, but, free versus literally thousands of dollars. If you've never used a node network, I'm not going to get into that right now, but basically, link your layers together, and any transformation to layers higher in the stack affects everything beneath it. Also, yes, Tahoma's node network has an effects tab that works just like Toon Boom Premium. For free. I can't even explain how insane that is. You want a cutter node for masking? Add FX, matte in. There it is. You want a null object to group layers? Add a peg bar. Alright, going back to the main stage. If you need to import images, video, music, or audio to the stage, go to the Browser tab. Right-click and load. Flip back to 2D, and you'll see it on a new layer. If you want to use a video as reference, use panel Flipbook instead. Right-click and load. Now, Flipbook is prone to crashing because it's so slow to load, so save before trying it. Last thing that we should cover is exporting. All of that stuff is under the Render menu, Output Settings. Now, by default, exports go into your project's Outputs folder. File name here, file type here. Quality settings and alpha transparency if available. There are supposed to be codec options, but I will not describe the absolute nightmare I had trying to get Tahoma 1.6 user interface to show these. No amount of FFmpeg wrangling worked. But the good news is .mov exports with transparency by default. Afterwards, a preview window will pop up if you haven't disabled it in your preferences. Okay, time for advanced tips. First thing I always do is take a look at preferences and configure keyboard shortcuts as I draw so that they make sense for me. Scene preferences, paste options. I don't like insert pasting that moves the entire timeline. I like overwrite pasting. You can change your default poison here. Whatever default you don't have, you can get to any of the other paste options with a right-click menu, and then picking Paste Special. Being able to see zero thickness vector lines or not, really useful if you draw invisible boundaries for color separation. Although I did notice that the zero thickness lines are creating this jagged edge. I don't know why that's happening, so I've been using other things besides invisible zero thickness lines to do my color separation. Enable implicit hold. If you turn this off, Tahoma will assume that your blank frames are meant to be blank, and you'll have to manually drag this part to set your frame length. Default interpolation, the most important thing for tweens. If you leave this at linear, Tahoma will assume you want every transformation to start moving immediately on ones. You may want to change this default later based on your animation style. All individual tween behaviors and ease curves can be changed in the function editor panel. Constant interpolation in this program is the equivalent of a hold frame, and you'll see each column lets you individually control XYZ rotation scale. It works just like After Effects, and you can see your curves by clicking this tiny box up here. I'm scrolling in and out using my mouse wheel. In Tahoma, the curve handles are actually these brackets. Right-click step is how you control if you want your tween to be on 1s, 2s, 3s, etc. There are limitations on the curves. I use really steep exponential curves a lot, but Tahoma doesn't seem to be able to do that, and faking one looks really awkward. Although I will say, interpolation curves might be improved in version 1.6.1, which just came out today as I'm recording this. These are bugs and issues I've found so far, and again, I'm on 1.6, so not the newest version. First, when you exit and re-enter a project, you might discover small things that are not quite the same. Fills might disappear. A line might lose its original thickness. So far, nothing has been a big deal in my experiments. It's just weird to come back in and see that the math recalculated itself on a random detail. Bug number 2, performance issues. I haven't pushed Tahoma too hard yet, but I'm starting to feel the drag around here. With a strong PC, this is nowhere near as complicated as some of my nonsense gets, so we will see if it can handle it. 3, paste as a copy can glitch and permanently corrupt your entire project. You will not be able to fix it by cutting and pasting unbroken assets from a backup file. You have to delete the whole corrupted project, copy your backup into the old spot, and start again. Another lesson in having backups, especially in open source programs where you haven't really used it before and you don't know what might break. If paste as a copy breaks, figure out which layers are the corrupting problem and then use the alternate method. Highlight frames and press D to duplicate. Copy the layer and delete everything on it. Then drag the duplicates down one by one, and now you can draw on the duplicates without affecting the originals. 4, the selection tool should keep the selection selected even if you press Ctrl-Z, but it doesn't. Any other program allows it. Also, Tahoma's freehand selection lasso bugs when you pick the entire area. This happens often, meaning I have to hold Shift and lasso again, the bugged part. 5, the fact you can't drag a frame on top of another frame to replace it, super annoying. Don't like that. 6, there's no drawing substitutions panel, or if there is one, it doesn't do what you want it to do. You can't click on an image on the level strip to have it swap the currently selected drawing on the timeline. You have to manually type frame numbers to substitute or insert drawings. It's just not the most efficient. Visual pickers are much nicer. Let's see, number 7, I already mentioned this. Those zero thickness lines cause a jagged edge between color boundaries. And last issue, on raster layers, 100% hardness brushes result in jagged lines. I haven't found an anti-aliasing setting or render option aggressive enough to fix this. Soften your brush or use vector layers or draw in 4K to avoid the jaggedness. Okay, that was a huge tutorial that covers the basics of Tahoma2D. Did this video help you? Has other animation software become unaffordable and expensive and crazy to you as an independent animator? Because for me, it sure has. Write your story in the comments so I can see it.